Is it too late to say sorry? I know we've fallen out of touch, but can we take time to make up? God's already healed so much, but it'd be nice to know in person it was all used for a purpose. I'm sorry I ever hurt you at all.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Live in the Studio. We are back today with our first returning guest. You're the first person that's come back. It is Rebecca Lauren.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't know if I should say hi.
No, we've been busy.
Yeah.
Like we were talking, we had brunch with you and your fiance, which by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big life update.
Yeah.
Like all the questions we wrote down, we were like, we mostly know these answers.
Yep.
But I think the whole idea is that we get to kind of like just talk with you and let you share like what's been happening in your life as of late. And let people who don't like do life with you on a day-to-day basis like hear what's going on. So,
Little inside scoop.
how have you been?
Pretty good. Yeah. Keeping busy. Doing a whole lot of music, which has been just like such a great blessing. I've been able to do ministry with a lot of amazing teams, and it's just been kind of cool. It's been kind of a season of looking back at like the dreams that I had as a little kid, and you know, realizing that a lot of those dreams were actually callings and they're coming true right now. I quit my job and went into full-time music, and at the moment I need to get another job, but that's besides the point. So it's been really cool to be able to just like focus in on that, and I feel like that was a gift from the Lord. So it's definitely been a really cool season.
What's been new? Like, I think you said you have July written on our questions. Is that when her episode was?
Yeah, her episode in season 1 was July 15th, I think. And then later that same day, you had your CD release concert.
Oh,
so,
my God.
Like, it's been since
That was
then.
one day. Wow.
Yeah, that is crazy. We didn't film it. No, it released that day.
It released
Okay.
that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recount that. So the CD release.
That was such a special night. Honestly, it kind of still feels like I'm a little still processing it because I kind of just stopped. But yeah, I think something that was super special was being able to hear everybody singing my songs back to me. Not mine, they're the Lord's. But it was just really special because, you know, I really wanted those songs to be something that could be led in worship. And so being able to hear the congregation singing like that's just always my favorite thing. And so being able to have it be the songs that the Lord gave me it was humbling. It was really special.
Yeah,
So.
I was thinking back. The first thing that comes to mind for me that night is that like just because of the context of where we're at is that was when Chloe Olivia saw us in passing. It's like the podcast guy. So it was like
that was the first time you were like recognized, right?
First time, and I was like, oh, that's really bizarre. I didn't expect that to happen so quick. I also remember playing the solo for Foundations. I think that was the last time I've played it.
Really?
I think so. I don't
That's
think we've played it
sad.
since then, have we?
It feels so short, like, but
Like, it wasn't that long ago, but it kind of was like...
it really was.
Yeah.
I'm
Almost
so bad
a
at
whole
math.
year.
How long was that? We're almost a year.
10 months,
April, May, June, July. So, like 8 months.
somewhere around there. Yeah, I remember, I think that was one of the only times we've ever played the one off our upcoming album live, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's true. You asked us to do that.
People who were at that concert are the only ones who've heard it.
Somebody asked me when we got done playing, like, where can I hear that again? I was like,
Nowhere.
you're like a long way out. I'm really sorry.
Y'all have a goal for like releasing it though, right?
Yeah.
Can I ask about that?
Yeah, September. You're flipping it on us.
Yes, I am.
September is the goal, I think.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
It's basically
amazing.
done.
So good.
Is the hard part, and we were talking about this yesterday. Is like, so you're working on new music as well, and so are we, and we're helping each other with our new music. And so there's this piece of it where, like, you develop like a schedule for how everything's just like ideally it's just this picture and everything's gonna go perfect, and then you get like 3 steps into it and you're like already adjusting for how it hasn't gone according to plan.
Yeah.
What is can you think of pros and cons for things like when it comes to the plan and then when it like derails?
I think having a plan is super helpful when you're working a lot of moving parts. So I'm not just working with you, I'm working with Chelsea also. And so like having a schedule is really good for just being able to keep everybody on the team on the same page. But life happens. I mean, Chelsea's been going through a big transition. Y'all have been super busy with all of this, which is amazing. And so it's just taken a little bit of extra time. And I don't think that that's one thing that I've learned is that the Lord always has a reason for plans not going the way I wanted it. And so he knows a whole lot better than my little Excel spreadsheet. And so I'm trusting that whenever the songs do come out, that it's at the right time and for the right people. And so
yeah, it's a tough thing, because like for me, my plan deviates for two reasons. One, either something actually went wrong, or two, which you have personally called me on, I just didn't commit. You know what I mean? And so I get into both things where it's like there's definitely days where I'm like, I could have been here doing something and I'm not. And it's like, I think that we all struggle with that. Like, I mean, I think everybody struggles with feeling like motivated to do some things.
Yeah.
And for me, like in making music, it's like at a certain point, like what we do, it I love it to pieces, but then you hit this moment where like it is a job.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely a lot of work and effort, and it's
very
tough
time-consuming
to want to do it. So I think on some level, it's like I never try to let myself off the hook for that, because I like definitely like there's plenty of times where I know I could be farther ahead if I went in and worked. And then there's other times where I'm like, you got to just let go of it and go work hard now, instead of being like worried about what you can't help no matter what, And so I definitely struggled there. I think in a lot of ways, like you see people work these schedules, they're just insane. And it's like, okay, I could do that. And then I start trying it and I'm like, I can't do it. But then I'm like, no, but try it anyway. And so it's like, this is like constantly like working as hard as you can, not letting yourself off the hook, and then like being surrendered to however it plays out, even if it doesn't go how you planned that it would.
It literally helps no one to beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think weighing the day-to-day, not priorities in life, because I think for the most part those stay the same, but the task priorities from day to day definitely change depending on what is coming your way, and you don't want to stick to your plans so much that you're missing other opportunities. Like last night, we had an event. We were thinking about going or not going because we had work to finish up, and we were like, we're just gonna go. We're gonna support our friends, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna work late. And that's that was how that ended up working out. But we could have stuck to the plan of like, no, we're gonna stay here until like work's technically done, and then we're gonna leave. But we wouldn't have been able to go. So you just you weigh that every day, and sometimes it's okay if the plan gets a little derailed by.
Yeah.
We're a lot derailed.
We're a lot derailed by stuff you got going on.
Yeah. I think recognizing that like there's parts where everybody has like personal like shortcomings in their stuff, and like recognizing that certain times like the Lord intended it to be that way. Other times it was just like something you messed up and God's going to work through it anyway. Like,
yeah.
Like I think it was on worship retreat. Wasn't that kind of one of the things? It's like, either God's will superseding your own, or he's redeeming something. It was like one of the lessons
that was
off
good.
that. Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us about what you're working on right now?
Lots of new singles.
The song came out today.
Yes. It was a surprise release. I'm calling it kind of like an intro, but Better Now dropped today, which is super exciting. And it's really just kind of describing my healing process over the last couple of years, and the songs to be released afterwards. I'm not going to spoil too much, but it's basically just kind of diving deeper into what that looked like for me. So I'm excited. It's going to be really.
Yeah, production wise, this one was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's super stripped. Like it's just you and the piano, which is one, like, I think in a lot of ways is really sweet, because that is very much, I guess maybe for a while, like when I think of like your music and you, like those are the two things that are like, they have to be there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or at least they're two of the most unique things about your songs. But I think it's interesting because your blend of, because a lot of your music, I've told you this before, is rooted in piano. There's sort of this like natural, like it doesn't sound just like everyone else because you do so much work on the piano. So like that intro, I like already think about it. When I hit play on it at like 12:05 or whatever time it came out, I was like da 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 da, like, and I know those little walk downs and stuff like that. But then trying to keep your vocal, the more you've been doing production stuff, like I definitely on your vocal, I had a mind to like what's the right amount of pitch correction and all those kinds of things. So there was this like, I tried to strike this like really sweet spot balance of leaving some of the things undone and then like making sure a lot of it is super well done and like or super corrected, however you want to put that. It's just interesting. I mean, I felt
leaving
like
the breath track in.
putting breaths back into it. Like
fun.
there were
Sorry
some.
about that.
No, it's okay. You know, you had to sit with me while I did it, so
Yep.
it was fair. The interesting, like, talk about the balance you're trying to strike with that in your music, like, because I know you're trying to incorporate some new things, and I know you said you don't want to spoil anything, but like, you're definitely trying to evolve certain pieces of it. Will you kind of speak to that a little bit?
I've been inspired by how pop music and indie artists have really evolved over the years. I feel like there's this emphasis on honesty, and honestly, even more of like, we used to think of back in the 2010s, like, me and my sister, we just made fun of pop music because it was the same 4 chords and it was just super repetitive and absolutely no lyrical depth to it at all. And so now I feel like people are starting to actually take pride in having lyrical beauty and using acoustic instruments combined with the pop sound and the synthesized plugins and all of that. And so I've been really inspired by that and just wanted to kind of try it out. I feel like the Christian music industry needs a little bit more of that, I feel like, because it bridges a gap between audiences, if that makes any sense. So that's my goal.
Yeah. I think just from mixing them, one of the things for me is like, I want to see a way to take, like, in the long run, I know you're going to have, just in speaking from experience, like, I think you'll have songs that lean a little bit heavier into one and a little bit heavier in the other. In fact, I think, like, off of what we're hearing now, like, there's sort of this, like, okay, this is what we've got. This is this new idea. And I'm interested to see, maybe it's the third record, I don't know, where they start to, like, become one thing. Like, you know, like, if you take just a very rudimentary, like, example, you take rock and then you take rap and then now you have rap rock, right? Like, there's this point where you'll start to try to, like, shove them closer together dynamically, and you'll have a song that goes from this, like, starts off as this, like, rooted in piano and some other, like, acoustic or electric instrument that, like, builds into, like, a pop at the end or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very curious to see, the more we get to kind of play around with some of the things you're bringing in that are new, like, how intricately you can kind of weave them together. I think that'll be really fun. I'm excited for that. From a mixing perspective, those are the kinds of things where I'm like, I love what I'm mixing right now, but I'm also like, as soon as I start working on something, I'm like the kind of person where I'm thinking about, like, I wonder where this is going to lead, like, 5 songs from now, because this is going to be a cool thing.
Yeah, I think one cool thing, and, like, I'm just super interested in, like, how social media changes things or whatever. And something I've, like, from my perspective, something I've kind of noticed is that, like, in the 2010s, like what you're talking about, like, pop music, I feel like, was written and made to sound good on radio and to catch people's attention and get them to listen to it like that. And now, like, stuff still has hooks, and there's definitely still party anthems out there, you know, Meghan Trainor and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, people, I feel like, are writing and making music to catch people's attention online instead of on radio, which is, like, a totally different format of a thing, you know, because, like, that's TikTok and some of these other platforms, like, they want authenticity. Like, that's what the algorithm likes, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't like super promotional, here's my new party single kind of thing. It likes people, I guarantee TikTok knows what this mic looks like, and it pushes it into the algorithm because I see so many people holding this, like, mic and just talking about their song and then singing it, and that's got much more reach now. And so I think that's affected pop music a lot. I
think authenticity has always been something that people really value in music. Like, at the same time, it makes me think of the 90s. There was an element of it faded at a certain point, but in the late 90s, there was this, like, piece of rock music that was so, and it was anger, it was angst, like, all day. It was just so real that I think it was attractive to people who were feeling upset about how their life was or whatever else, you know. I mean, like, I think of Linkin Park's, like, the first one that comes to mind for me, because that was one of the first bands I ever got into. their CD came out like the day before my 4th birthday, I think. And so I just remember getting that and putting it on, and there was something about it, like you knew that they meant what they were singing. And then you move like forward in time, and like granted, a lot of what they mean is really dark, like and really depressing, but there's a rawness to it that transcends even what, like, I mean, the fact that a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old can love Linkin Park, like I've never gone through anything. You know what I mean? At that age, like I might as well just, you know, like totally blank slate. I hadn't had anything hard happen in my life.
Yeah.
But like I could tell there was something special about it, and I think that sort of transcends versus like I don't really, in some ways, like obviously there are producers involved in every genre that are trying to like identify like what's really going to reach the audience, but I definitely don't think that at that point in time people were like, how can we write this song that's like the perfect audience for like this kind, like I don't think it was like that. I think it was just they were writing and maybe they thought about what their fans might like, but that was probably the most thing they cared about. Like nobody was worried about like mass appeal in rock music in the 90s. It just sort of blew up and happened because they were trying to write music that they thought was real. So for you personally, like rewinding to, obviously it's not the first song you wrote, but it's the first song you put out, which was Dear Abigail, to this one, Better Now. I think it's actually kind of interesting that the arrangements aren't too different. Yeah. Like like dynamically, like it's a similar setup. There's a little bit more in Dear Abigail, but they kind of like have like a through line from song to song, and there's been little changes in the catalogs through there. But how do you feel like your songwriting has evolved from like that one to this one?
Yeah. I was talking to a friend, and she said that it seems like your music is changing a little bit to be a little bit less for other people, and I'll explain kind of what that means in a little bit, and a little bit more from you, if that makes any sense. And so I think the way that, you know, maybe stylistically it hasn't changed a lot, but I think the subjects, when I first started writing, it was really easy to write about other people's stories because, one, people really inspire me, but also, two, I think there is a lack of vulnerability when you're telling other people's stories. And I would put, you know, a little bit of myself in all of them, but they were masked by the subject of the song. And so now, like, my goal is really to be vulnerable and, you know, things that I've experienced and how the Lord has taught me through it, and allow the songs to share like the hard stuff that probably wasn't how I should have responded to situations, and also how the Lord redeemed all of that. And so not to be egocentric, but I think I'm able to share more of my story through my music. And Better Now is just kind of like the beginning of that.
Okay, so I'm going to start this. I'm going to kind of tell part of this story, which was like maybe 2-3 months ago. We were talking about some of the different things you're doing around here, and you were talking to me about the possibility of like filming a TikTok. And you just said, hey, would you mind if when I came in, like I filmed, I don't remember. I don't even think you told me what it was. You were just content for TikTok.
I was embarrassed.
I was like, sure.
A TikTok.
That sounds cool. And I mean, I thought about it, but I didn't think on it too much. And like 2 weeks go by. I think it was like 2 weeks, and you post this. And I'm like, oh, that was really cool. And it was like a rewrite of like someone else's song as a worship tune. And like it did pretty well, but like I was like, oh, that's cool. And then like I remember looking back, or somebody saying something to me like 3 days later, and it had like blown up to the point where I think it was like, what was the first benchmark? Like 30,000 views or something like that. Because it's at 1 million now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, like I remember talking to you afterwards, and I said, well, I hope that was confirmation for you, because that was absolutely confirmation for me. Like I didn't think too heavily on it, but I was like, man, that's so cool. Like that was just not something I'm going to ask you this, but I don't think it, I think I feel like that the answer for this question, which is one of the thoughts I had, was, is there something you feel like you did right? But like, truthfully, I really think that was just the Lord.
Yeah.
Like,
no, 100%.
Like, what did you do right? I mean, just do it. Like in the first place, you know, and he had a hand on it. And so it did very well. What's that been like though?
It's been a huge blessing. I was not expecting anything to come out of it. I was just like getting these ideas for these videos, and was like, I need content, so why not? And then, you know, people really started responding to it. I think what's been the biggest blessing that has come out of those is that I'm able to reach a lot of, you know, people who are kind of on the fence about Christianity and about the Lord, and they follow these other artists who are not Christian. And so then the algorithm pushes this worship version, and I'm getting all these comments of people like, you know, I'm not Christian, but this made me feel something, or I'm not religious, but wow. And like, ultimately my heart is that the Lord would reveal that that's really the Holy Spirit. Because whenever you speak truth, like, the Holy Spirit is present in that. And so I think that's been the coolest thing for me, is just being able to reach people outside of the church, because I'm in that circle so much, and it's such a blessing. But being able to like step out has been really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that there's an element of like ministry 100% of the time being within the church doesn't make sense to me. Like, I mean, I know that there are some people that their calling is specifically that, and like I think to obviously like honor that's great. But then there's another piece of it where it's like, you know, most of the people that come to church, like, they already know the Lord. And so there's always a piece of it where you look at it and you go, okay, like, somebody's called to go out, right?
Yeah,
and I think,
forth.
or even stand in both places. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. I know you've got elements of that are within your music too. Like, why don't you just write conventional worship tunes 24/7? It's because, you know, ultimately, I think from I mean, I won't speak for you, but from the outside looking in, it seems as though, you know, your heart is to reach more than just like people that already know Jesus. You know, I don't know. You can confirm or deny that.
Yeah, I think it's
is that a fair way of saying it?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of beauty in the relatability of music, and you know, I was kind of looking at Christian music, and not saying that there's anything wrong with it right now, but I'm seeing a lack of, like, you know, breakup songs from like a Christian perspective, or, you know, what do you do when you have like a bad friendship, or when life just sucks, like, what do you do, you know? And I think we kind of broadly cover those topics, but what I can see from my generation is that they really need specifics, and music is an avenue where they can feel understood, and the Lord is the person who understands us better than anybody. And so, like, my heart was really to write songs that people can relate to, and show them that the Lord isn't afraid of your mess, and he isn't afraid of working in your life in the midst of all those things. And it's okay to have music that's the Christian perspective of how do you handle this situation, so that you don't always have to turn to Taylor Swift or whatever for all of those types of songs. But then over time, as that dream has evolved over the writing process, yes, my goal has also been to reach people who aren't as keen on normal worship music. I'm still going to drop normal, like, Sunday morning worship 100%. So I really don't want to feel like confined in one or the other, and hope that the Lord will lead all the right people to hear it.
Well, for us, it's we've literally, like, I mean, I already told you this, but just for the sake of saying it, is like we very much I feel a calling to stand like in a spot that's just in between, you know. There's a part of me that, like, I have been on staff or volunteering and or serving on on a church team since I was 15, no, younger, 14, 13, so like almost 14 years. Like, almost as soon as I started playing guitar, like, I started learning guitar at 12, and by the time I was 13 I was playing at church. So it's been like 14 years, and so, like, obviously, like, I have a heart for that, but it early on, it's like it's changed, like, where I feel like my like the calling of where I'm supposed to be focused at different times has changed through the years. Like, there definitely have been seasons where I'm like, all right, this is what the Lord has right now, do this and go after this and make this a priority and all that. And then there's times where we've been like, our main focus has been like being out in the city, playing shows at bars, and like I just felt like that was where we were supposed to be at that time. And so I mean, I think it ebbs and flows. Like, I think it's fair to say that, like, I suppose that the Lord could call you to do one specific thing from now until you die, and like part of me is like afraid of that. And like there was a point where I was like, if this is all I'm supposed to do, like surrender that and be okay with it. Specifically for me, that was set up. Like I was like, gosh, like I don't enjoy this, but at the same time, like this is something the Lord has called me to, and if that was all He ever called me to, would I just do it? And like I had to wrestle through that in like my younger 20s, and I was like, yeah, this would be enough. Like I get to do this with my dad. I get to do this with my wife. I get to do this with my friends. It helps me in these ways and this way. Like I've said this as well, like not that we're supposed to be counting what we gain, but like I've gained so much from this thing that I think is not very valuable.
Yeah.
Like then I'm like guilty of being like, I don't like this. This is not what I'm supposed to do. It's like, no, like it's what you're supposed to do because God put you in front of it and said, do this, you know? And so there's this piece of it for me where I think there's a surrender there of like, whatever it does look like, you're just obedient to. And it, for most of us, I don't think it usually has been the same thing our entire life. I mean, people become parents, people become friends with new people become better at different things over time. And so been an interesting thing for us.
Is there anything you felt that's been kind of challenging or like a hurdle in having a bigger following?
Yeah, wait. So you've gone from how many followers to how many followers? Because this is part of the results of that video.
I started with like 1,040, and now, so this is on Instagram. Now I'm at 15.7K, and on TikTok, 20 something K.
Yep. It's no joke.
Yeah,
I know just from talking to you, it came with a couple negative comments too.
A little bit, honestly. In the whole scheme of things, it hasn't been too bad. I mean, you're gonna have haters no matter what. But yeah, some people didn't really agree with the idea of changing a secular song to a Christian song because the original song wasn't inspired by Christ. And you know, I kind of get that, but I also think, you know, in the case of the one song that people really weren't loving me changing, it was a song about love, and it wasn't inherently bad to begin with. It was a beautiful song. I love that song. But I also think that the Lord makes a habit of redeeming worldly things to further His kingdom. And I was at a conference this past September, and one of the speakers was kind of talking about this, and he was like, you know, people didn't like Christian rap when it first came out, and Christian hip hop and stuff. And his response was basically like, the cross is such a great example of God using like such a brutal form of punishment, and it was obviously not something that the Lord inspired in people's hearts and whatever, but He used it to ultimately pay the price for His children to have restored relationship with Him. And so I think in the same way, you can use music as a way of like redeeming something in order to reach a new audience or just share the love of Christ in a new way. And it doesn't have to be this complicated thing all the time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that somebody have a problem with that. We hadn't actually talked about that. So when I was a kid, and my dad's and my grandpa in their youth group, the kids there only wanted to really like, well, I don't know, because I was like a little kid running around just around like roughhousing or all over the church, like running over chairs and like sprinting up in the balcony and like having a blast while rehearsal was going on. But they rewrote secular songs to be the worship tunes they played for youth. And I mean, I'm not talking like lighthearted. I'm talking like I Hate Everything About You, 3 Days Grace was rewritten as a worship tune. Like all these different like secular songs. It was really interesting, honestly. So like I actually grew up around a little bit more of that than I even ever thought about until this conversation, truthfully. And, you know, I mean, at that point it was like, I think, you know, my dad was leading the youth group, so it would be a thing to probably ask him. But looking back on it, it's just like, what tool is the most effective for sharing the gospel in this context? And if the most effective tool is rewriting somebody else's song with God focused lyrics, then
I also think people have different convictions as far as like what music they should be listening to and all that. And some people, like, I believe that I'm going to try to word this the right way, but I believe that if the Lord has convicted you not to listen to secular music, there's a reason for that. And like, it's okay for some people to listen to that because, you know, it really depends on their heart and the temptation that it can ultimately lead to. And so like when people are commenting, they're like, you know, you really shouldn't be listening to secular music and stuff. And it's like, you know, if the Lord has told you that, you should totally stick with it, because however I feel about that shouldn't change what the Lord has ultimately convicted you to do. And so like, I remember when I was younger, I went to a camp and they changed Dynamite to be a Christian song. I won't necessarily say that was the best choice, but I think just ultimately, like, when it comes to all of these things, there's not necessarily one right answer, and the Lord's going to convict different people to do different things when it comes to these gray areas a little bit. And so, like, my encouragement would be to definitely continue listening to the Lord when it comes to these things, because, like, he might be telling you to play in the bars and stuff, but he might tell me that I shouldn't, you know, and it just kind of depends. So,
yeah, it's like, it's interesting. Like, I was reading this past week, but like that verse in Romans, which I you know, obviously it's about food, so it's not a perfect metaphor. But it was, it's Romans 14, starting at 19. Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and mutual edification. Do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. All food is clean, but it is wrong for a person to eat anything that causes someone else to stumble. It is better not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall. So whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. Blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves. But whoever has doubts, if condemned, if they eat, because their eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin. It's like, what I think it speaks to is that there's, the issue is a heart thing. And I know, well, I'm just like opinion here, but from the outside and watching you, like, I know that your heart in rewriting a secular tune is not to like, no. It's totally like the intentions are good. So I think there's a lot to be said there, but yeah, no, it's good talk. It's a good conversation. I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, we write secular songs and some of them are like totally like not about good happy things, because newsflash, I don't have good happy things inside me 24/7. I don't know how everyone else is. I'll just speak for myself. Like, sometimes what goes on for me internally, it like ain't all, I don't think the Lord approves of it. Like, truthfully, I have stuff that's within me that I know the Lord knows there's better for me. And so it's like, what do I do with that? How do I not lie about what's going on? And how do I talk about being depressed, or how do I talk about whatever else is I'm going through, or whatever? Or even when I was, especially when I was younger, like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to say there's less of it now, but I think that I think when I was younger, I fell into the trap of like, if I was in a dark and depressed place, like I let it take over my whole brain. Like, I just would dwell in it, and I try my best to not now, you know. Like, you know what, I already know that this isn't good for me. Like, I'm just gonna like go for a walk, or talk with my wife about it, or talk to my dad about it, or whatever else, and try to pull myself out of places that I know are not good for me to be, you know. And I think that there's an element to that where that's definitely a process for like each person. But I think in songwriting, there's this piece of it where, like you said, like, people have different callings. For me, like, part of that has been to be honest in everything. And that doesn't mean I share every song, but it definitely means, like, I think that I've always felt compelled that when I sit down to write, just to write, not to share every time, but to write, like, it's a space where I really feel like is open for me to put down on paper whatever's going on here, or even whatever I'm thinking about, like, whatever it is, like, just put it on the page. And sometimes I leave it on that page and it never goes anywhere else. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of grace in that. I really feel like that's something that the Lord gifted me with, in the sense of like a gift to me to be able to process that way. Because I have a really hard time doing it outside of songwriting. And so it's unique, and I definitely value it when I see other people write songs about what they're going through, or that are topics that, obviously probably don't belong in like a corporate church service, but are still good, and they're doing their best to seek the Lord on things that are tough. Like, I'm like, all right, glad to know I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. I think there's value there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to a lighthearted topic for just a second.
Just one second.
You've been mixing a ton, specifically here on the show.
Yes.
I know a lot of people would know it if they've been watching for more than one, but Becca has been doing our post mixing for this, and we kind of tag team it. So she'll come in, edit like the vocals, and then we'll come in and listen to it together to make adjustments. Sometimes I go back through, but you've been doing probably just about every episode, other than the ones that like were like just not something you had ever done before, and I've been coming in and helping out there. But how's that been?
It's been a lot of fun.
I know that like we're like, but we hope it's been good.
My boss is crazy.
It's true.
Actually.
We're both crazy in our own way.
I'm not crazy.
No, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you have to say you're not crazy, then
Yeah, that's true.
It's been a lot of fun. I think I've definitely grown a lot over this season. I feel almost a lot more than the last season. I started off a little rusty, but it's been really cool because I think we've had a lot more like duets or extra instruments or like full bands and stuff like that. And that's been really fun to be able to take mixing from just like one vocal and one instrument to actually finding the balance between like, I think it was Eternals. That was so fun because they had so many different like guitar parts that needed to come out and be woven through so that it just, I don't know, just being able to find the beauty in each part and let it be spotlighted for the moment that it shows up in the song. Seeing that from a creative side has been really, really fun for me. So
yeah, I think my approach to it has always been like, I just honestly, it kind of boils down to like a sympathy because I care so much about the songs I've written. Like they're very near and dear to me. And so there's like this opportunity that somebody trusts you with something that how, like you and I particularly know very well how much a songwriter cares about what they're doing. Whether it's a song that is like totally my style or my cup of tea or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like I know that to that person it means at least as much as it means to me. And so there's always this like value, and I really think an honor to get to like help and just be alongside somebody in that and do everything you can to make it like the farthest extent that you have the ability to push it. And I think it's been really cool to see you really go for that in songs and really like truly care about what you're like working on, not just like the idea of like how does it sound perfect or like, but more like what's the right thing to do, what was the what's going on here, is there a way to make that better, this better, pulling apart from here to fix a part there, like really going above and beyond to take it as best as we can take it. And really just to give people, I think when they come on the show, like the heart behind it is that there's a very good and well done representation of who they are and as an artist and as a songwriter that people can come and hear and like, when you meet somebody for the first time, like you try to put your best foot forward, and like that's the same goal. Like how do we help them put their best foot forward? As people who watch the show usually haven't seen them before. You've been doing great.
Thanks.
Is there like a number one thing that you feel like you've learned or on the other side of that, like a number one like difficulty about the whole thing?
I don't know. I think it's been a lot of little lessons over time that kind of compile into just getting better. And I honestly don't feel like it's been one big thing, because really what mixing is and tuning and whatever, like it's all about the details and really paying attention to those. So I think overall I'm starting to get a little bit more in tune to details that are important and what to really focus on. And I've still got a long way to go, but it's we're honing that a little bit better.
I think listening to me is what I've noticed has really jumped out. Like you're hearing more, which is funny because there would be times where we're like listening to something together. I'm like, do you hear that? You're like, nope.
Yep.
And then, but slowly and surely, like every once in a while, you point something out to me, or I'm like, yeah, I didn't hear it. And so that's always a really cool thing. And like people that have that, you have that naturally, and it would like happen intermittently when we were working on like on some of your songs. That was one of the first indicators to me that like it might be a good fit, because you would hear something and I'd be like, I'd have to really look and like pay attention, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
like, you have an ear for sure.
I feel bad because now that you've taught me more of what to pay attention to when it comes to working on my songs, you'll show up to me and I'm like, can we look at this and this and this? Not saying you always do an incredible job, but I feel like I'm being a little bit more picky, and so
fun.
I feel bad.
Well, okay,
But
so in the long run, it's learning to kind of like eventually, like you're in the sweet spot where like you haven't been a hypercritic for long. Like I have to shut some of that off for me. Like I'm like, okay, is that just me hyperfixating, or is that actually an issue?
Yeah.
And like I'm constantly trying to push back on like what I hear, and like we both know this, like leave something a little more undone. Like I'm like trying to make that choice without it having to be like you and me going back and forth. I'm like fighting that within me from the get-go now. And I think eventually you'll get to that point where it's like every song I hear another song in. It kills me. I listened to 3 different songs this week, and in every one of them, I could relate a chord progression, a melody, and I can't shut it off. And so I'm like, does this song sound too much like that song? And I show it to either her or my dad at that point. And everybody tells me they're crazy, but I'm not joking. It has started to happen with everything, and it is a nightmare. Like, and so you'll get to this point where it's so good that you can listen like that, because you need to be able to talk to people about it and be like, hey, I noticed this, if it's really valid. But 9 out of 10 times it ain't valid. It's just your brain like being so used to just this level of detail that is like, no one else is ever gonna pay that much attention to.
He's like, this chord progression matches. I'm like, hun, it's 6-4-1-5.
I'm
How
like,
many songs?
No, I'm like, if you drop the key,
this chord progression.
if you drop the key 3 steps and then you change this note, this note, and this chord underneath it, it sounds just like this. And it's like, that is not a valid concern. Let it go. But eventually, like, there's that piece of kind of like you have to let go of certain things, because nothing will ever truly be perfect. And so how do you, like, a song's never done, like, ever. In my head, a song is never done.
That's so sad.
It's true though. Like, you can always go back and improve. Always. And so when is a song done if you don't just call it done? And like, there's a point of learning that, of like, all right, this is a good spot.
We're starting to see why our projects take so long.
Yeah. Well, okay, right. But on the other side of that, like, I'm just gonna say it. It's not arrogant. It's just true. Like, our stuff sounds really good. Like what Shay and I have, like, the music that we're working on, it takes a long time to make it sound that good. Like, we put full demos together with the full mix that I'm like, I know 5 to 10 other people would just release this, and then I'm like, let's redo all of it. And it feels a little ridiculous. And I know in some ways it is, but then you get to the other side of that process and it sounds that much better, and you're like, okay, that was kind of worth it. Now, do I overdo that? Yeah, 100% I overdo that. But I have a really hard time balancing those two things. That's what I'm basically talking about. You have to, you kind of have to fight that.
Yeah, what I've learned watching you two work together is that the audio in audio-visual production is not for me. Is not my calling.
Yeah, it's
when you're not here, he's like, "Do you hear that?" I'm like, "No." Not at all. He's like, it's like a tone, like an overtone. Do you hear it? And I'm like, nope, I don't. I sure don't.
I don't know if this is the right place to be confessing this, but I'll be honest. When we first started working together, like on my music, you'd ask me if I hear stuff, and I would kind of either gaslight myself into thinking that I did, or I just wouldn't. A lot of times say yes.
It's okay.
Yeah,
so
it's okay.
Sorry that
my
resume was a little.
No, it's okay. It's like yesterday we had one of my microphones has an issue, so there's a hum in it, but it's the talkback mic, so it doesn't matter at all. But every time I turn it off, I still hear the tone that it hums at, and I can't. So like when you were tracking yesterday, I kept turning it off and on and off and on and off and on, trying to make sure that it was actually gone, because it's just, the note is there. Like I still hear it. It's crazy. So we're gonna close, but I think probably the best way to do that is to talk about the song you're doing.
Yes.
I love this song.
I'm so glad.
The guitar parts are really fun. I was working on them this morning, and I feel like every time I work on something that I'm like doing stuff that I know is a little extra, I'm like, I hope she really likes this, because otherwise it's too much. But it's called Apology. Will you tell us about it?
Yeah. So first of all, you do a great job on this little cover that we do. So I'm excited for y'all to hear it. But it's basically kind of talking about one of the things that I've had to really come to terms with is that I'm really good at blaming other people for my hurt, when the reality is that I have just as much of a part in hurting other people. Like when it comes to like relationships not going the way that we imagine that they should and stuff, like it's a twofold thing. And so it's just kind of an admission of letting go of placing the label on somebody else and realizing that I need to take responsibility for the fact that I've never been perfect and I'm still not perfect, and owning up to that, and basically just kind of changing the narrative of things that I wasn't able to say in person. So yeah.
It's good.
Hope you guys like it.
All right. Well, Becca, thanks for coming on the podcast
Thank
for the
you.
second time. Can't wait to hear the song. I mean, you guys have technically already recorded it, but they don't know that. So you're hearing it for the first time.
You gave it away.
Thank you so much for watching today. Without further ado, here is Apology by Rebecca Lauren.
Bye.
Bye. I've spent a lot of time trying to victimize my life. Said it was everyone's fault, but I'm who's at fault sometimes. Harsh words can seem eternal, and mistakes will take some time, and I've made my fair share of mine. Is it too late to say sorry? I know we've fallen out of touch, but can we take time to make up? God's already healed so much, but it'd be nice to know in person it was all used for a purpose. I'm sorry I ever hurt you at all. I'm sorry I let bitterness grow. I'm sorry for the promises I broke. I'm sorry that I let us slowly drift apart. I'm sorry for the pain you worked through. I'm sorry that I did it to you. I'm sorry for the ghosts that I left with you. But is it too late to say sorry? I know we've fallen out of touch, but can we take time to make up? God's already healed so much, but it'd be nice to know in person it was all used for a purpose. I'm sorry I ever hurt you at all. And don't let the past make over your identity anymore. Don't let abandonment be who you are. 'Cause if I get to see you on this side of eternity, I hope we'd see things differently. Or is it too late to say sorry? Is it too late to say sorry? Is it too late to say sorry? 'Cause I'm sorry